Hello, everybody. So, what we're going to be going over today is going to be Pong. So, if you look at week 15, you should have this is not your class, but this is another section of your class. It's laid out slightly differently because this is the face to face version of the class. Now, if you look in here, you're going to see that one of the lectures you have this week is going to be on Pong. And another lecture, which is going to be in a separate video for you guys, is going to be on defining your own classes, which is what the Zybooks is this week. But today, this video, we are just going over Pong. Okay? And so you need to watch this video first because Pong is going to be the lecture, and then your lab is going to be to make a modification to Pong. Okay? So let's go ahead and just get started here. So first of all, if you're not familiar with what Pong is, it's one of the very first video games. So if I go to Google here and I try to type in Pong, then you'll see this. So that's a nice image right there. We probably don't need this article. Probably just want the picture. So that picture seems fine. There's a million different versions of Pong, right? So the idea here is you've got this paddle that you can move back and forth. And then there's a ball, which this must be the ball and it must be moving. And you bounce it back and forth, right? And so when the ball goes through your opponent's side, then you get a point. There's many versions of this. So like if I click on some other one, here's a simpler version, right? Where like there's no border and that kind of thing. But anyway, you just bounce the ball back and forth. A lot of times the ball is just a square. These are just squares or rectangles. You don't really have to draw the center divider, but you could. And that's Pong. Very simple game, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to write that game. And of course, we haven't done anything like that in this class, so that's going to be new stuff for us. And I'm going to try to make it as clear as possible as we go. So I'm going to click on this, which says, Pong, simple Pong example here. And I'll click it. And what you get here on this page is hopefully going to be pretty useful for us. It's a it's a bunch of different versions of the code. And those different versions of the code are going to be what we go through step by step to get through this game of Pong. Okay. Now, we're going to be drawing windows now. So we don't normally do that in this class, right? Because it takes kind of a lot of code in order to do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a project in Eclipse where I can put this in. So if I look at this, I see that it says public class simple Pong, right? That means that I need to call my class simple Pong when I create it in Eclipse. Otherwise, if the names don't match, of course, it's not going to run. So let me go over to Eclipse and we'll go File, New, Java Project. I will call it simple Pong. And then in there, under source, I'm going to do new class. And I'm going to pick simple Pong. And I don't really need to check the box for public static void main because we are going to copy paste it. So I'll just click finish. So here we go. So it's named simple Pong the same way mine was. You can just delete what's in there though. So let's go over here and let's copy this. And let's put it back in here. Now, these kind of descriptions above the code are going to explain what I did in each version because we're doing this step by step. So this first version of the code demonstrates creating a blank window using the Java Swing toolkit. So you'll see that we have imports at the top, right? Java X Swing and Java AWT. So java.awt is kind of the simplest, let's get a window up on the screen class. And the Java X swing or class has more components to make things easier for us to do. So we include both of these in order to draw a window. All right. Now what you've got then is down here in the main, right? So the main is actually a very short code. So when you're making a game, a lot of times this is what main looks like. Basically, your public static void main is just going to start up the game and make a window visible. That's it. Okay? So it doesn't have to do anything else. Everything else is going to be done in other methods. Also, the swing utilities invoke later thing, it's probably optional. So like if I go over here to here and I save this and I tried to run it, then we should, oopsie, what happened? What? I feel like maybe I've got like a problem with parentheses or something. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's a typo here. There's a typo here. Oopsies. I'm going to fix that before you guys see it. Yeah, so there is a typo here. So what this code does though is it just is going to make a blank window. Okay, and so essentially what you're doing down here in your main is we are going to make an object of class simple Pong, and we're going to name it game, and then we do new simple Pong. Now that's like you've done, like you do that for like scanners and so on, right? So this kind of syntax is not really new. And also, like I said, I think we can just kind of, if we wanted to, get rid of that stuff to make it look more like the code we're used to running. And I think that will still run. There we go. Now, when you create a new simple Pong, what is a new simple Pong? Well, that's what the code up here is. So class simple Pong. So what is inside of our class? Well, we have a game panel. Sorry, the class is JPanel, but I called it game panel. That's going to be our window to draw in. Okay, so this is creating a window for us to draw in. And then when we do a new simple Pong, what we're going to do to that window is we're going to give it a title. So windows usually have titles, right? Like this one, Eclipse Workspace. We can set a title. We can set a size. We can set what happens when you click the close button. We can put the window in a particular position, and we can decide whether or not you can resize the window. So it's set resizable false. So when I run this and I get a window, I cannot resize this window. This window does not resize. It's always going to be just this size. Okay. Now, you haven't seen code like this before, and the way that you do Windows type programs, I say Windows, but I don't mean the Windows operating system. I mean programs that have windows, that draw windows. When you create those, there's always code like this that you just have to have in order to get a window up. So like if you were going to make your own game, for example, you would either want to start with like basically this code with the names changed, or maybe even a later version that actually has like a game loop that redraws the window and stuff. So maybe you would start like around revision 3 of my Pong, even if you were not making Pong. So what else do we do? The game panel, well, that's going to be where we're drawing our game inside the window, and we have a paint component, that's so we can draw in it, and we're setting the background to black, so we're just making a black window. Okay, so like I said, this is stuff that you kind of just look up. You can go to for example, like if you were to go to like ChatGPT or something, and then you say write a simple Java swing application that, what do we want it to do? Just creates a 800 by 600 black window. So this is a good way to get kind of like this minimal kind of structure, right? Now this one's not done. It doesn't have as much done as I've done, but this is basically the same stuff here. Okay. So there we go. Also over here, if you look at what I've been using ChatGPT for, you'll see that I spent a whole long time trying to make ChatGPT help me make the web page. Like this web page over here with all these different versions. I wanted it to do this, which is like highlighting all the changes from version to version, and I wanted it to happen automatically, so I didn't want to have to highlight them myself. So I made ChatGPT help out. All right. Anyway, so this is just gets a minimal window up here, right? And you just kind of look up this code or copy paste it. Okay. Now, while we're at it, I want to talk a little bit about how Replit works. Replit is one of the few that will let us kind of make a graphical application. It probably won't work great in Replit. So your game is just not going to be very fun in Replit. You'll need to run it on a local computer in order to make it run fast. Having said that, if I go to like one of my Replit projects and I just delete what's inside here, then in Replit you usually have something like this, right? So your file is always called main.java. So if I were to copy paste the code from here, right? If I were to copy paste this code is all fine, except for, remember, I need to fix this mistake again. Then I can paste it. Let's fix the mistake. This was called game panel. It won't run if I try to run it now because the class has the wrong name. But that's the only problem. So what you'd have to do is basically go through here, and everywhere where it says simple Pong, I would have to have it say main with a capital M. So there and there. So that's two places. Just looking for everywhere where it says it. And down here. So three places like that. And then it should run. Oh, nope. Other side of that same equation also had a simple Pong. All right, try it again. And so you see that we've got a window up here. So this is not like quite as satisfying as running it in Eclipse, but there is just a window over here. Okay, so it is working there. You just have to again change every simple Pong to main, capital M. All right, so that's where we are right now. Our first version of this. Now, I'm going to try to skip maybe a couple versions at a time to make this go a little faster. So after we have a black window, then what we want to do is we want to start adding in variables that do things. Again, the description up here kind of is going to say what we're doing, and then also like down here, you're going to see what the changes are. So like we're going to need to keep track of the left player's score and the right player's score, right? Because remember, it looks like this. We have a score here and we have a score here. So we need variables for that. So we'll just add those lines. And they should be, up where your variables are. So like where the game panel is, that's where we can put them. Inside the class, but just right inside the class. So you add variables, okay? Also, you'll notice that I fixed, there was the mistake that I had made on the previous one is already fixed here. And then we want to draw the scores. So we have variables, integers to hold the scores. And then we need to draw the scores. So it's not that complicated here. If it like will all make sense. So graphics G is basically going to be a variable that we can use to get like to point to our window. So inside this method called paint component, that's where we do all of our drawing. Okay. So before it was just setting the background to black, but under where we set the background to black now we're going to draw the player scores. So we set the color to white, and this is how you do it. Again, you would just look that up or like look at an example. We need to set the font. So this is how you set the font. We're picking the Arial font. Font.plain. We could have, this is where you would do font.bold or font dot whatever, italic, I guess, whatever. And then 60 is going to be the size. I think that's in pixels, but we would look it up if we needed to know. When I say look it up, what do I mean? I mean, we would just do like swing graphics, what is it called? Set font? Where is it? Yeah, set font. Set font size. Right? So when you Google something like that and look for one that looks like documentation and not somebody else that's asking a question, then size 10 says like, okay, plain font size 10. Well, okay, that doesn't actually help. It doesn't say. I don't know if that's like 10 points or 10 pixels is what I'm saying, but regardless, it's the size. Change it and make it bigger or smaller. And then we want to draw the scores. So how do we do it? Well, let me put these in. So let's put these in first. We could put them all in at once, but I'll do it like this. So in the paint component, we set the color to white, and then we want to draw something. And so there's like a lot of comments in here, but if we look at this, we want to draw string, value of the left player score. So we're going to get the number for the left player's score, which is an integer, right? 0. And we're going to turn that player score into a string. And then we're going to print it at 5080. That's a location. That's X and Y. So when we run this right now, I don't know what error I'm going to have to fix. Oh, there was none. Then this is what we're getting. Okay, so we just have a 0 there. And the reason it's right here in this corner is because 0, 0 is up here in the upper left corner. So when we say 5080, that's 50 this way, 80 down. So right here. So basically we're picking like the lower left corner there. And then this is where our line is going to be. So we put the 0 there. Okay, so you could do a lot of things, right? Like if you want to make it bigger, you could say like, oh, I actually want it to be 120, twice as big, right? And now it's really big. But then it goes off the screen, so you'd have to say, well, I would need to draw it lower. So I'll put it down at like 100. And maybe also, maybe we'll move it over, so we'll have 120. Something, right? And then, you know, okay, we're going to print it there, right? So you print it however big you want, wherever you want, basically. But that's how you would do it. Then if you want to do exactly the same thing for the right player score, right, you can just put this line here, change that to the right player score. And of course, we don't want to print it in the same place. We need to print it over to the right. So way over to the right would be like if I put like a 400 there. Let me save this and run. Now, the problem with this is that like we would like this automatically so that like this score and this score were both centered. And so, but I don't know if we can do that. Well, we could, but I don't know the easiest way. So the way that I did it here is this line right here this is going to be a way to get like how wide a piece of text is. And then what you can do is if you do this right here, where's the right, hold on. And then if we, I'm missing a line, it's why I was being confused here. And then so what's happening is this is doing this in two kind of steps here, where what's happening is I got this function in order to be able to get how wide a piece of text is. This function is going to turn, or this line is going to get a variable with the right score in it, and it's going to be the value of the right player's score. And then this code can print it in kind of a centered way, where we're going to print the right score. The get width is how wide your window is, so that's like 600. And then this was minus 50 because remember this started as 50 and this started as 80. And then so what was happening here was if you put the 50 there and you put the 80 there, then it would be centered. I probably need to save it. So like this distance and this distance are the same. So it was like carefully calculating where to put that text, which was, we didn't have to. We could have just typed in the numbers where we wanted it. Okay, so we have that. And we're drawing the scores. Again, you can change the sizes. So like if I go, I want to print it 80, and then I want this over like 80, but then maybe this should go down to 100, then I should also change this to 80, and then I should also change this to 100, and hopefully everything would still be centered, right? Looks okay to me. All right, so anyway, we're just trying to get the numbers on the screen, and that's what we did. Okay, and then nothing is changing down here in the main. So then we want to draw paddles. So in order to draw the paddles, when I say the paddles, what we're talking about are these guys, right? On the left and the right. They're just rectangles. They're just rectangles, so that's easy to draw. So what we need is we need to start keeping track of where they are. Okay, so let's go, lose track of where this is. So we're going to add variables for a few things. So actually all these things. So we'll take those, we'll go here. After I do this, we'll go back to Replit, by the way. So these are variables, so they go up with my variables up here. I hate how there's extra lines here. I need to delete those. All right. So what we got going on here is if we're going to draw these paddles, I'm going to have a variable for how wide a paddle is. It's 15 pixels. How tall is a paddle? 90 pixels. Now you can change those, but this is just the numbers I'm setting them to right now. And then paddle edge margin, what's that? Well, that's going to be how far from the screen or from the edge we're going to draw them, right? So like this distance, that's the margin, right? It's just decisions that have to be made about where you're going to draw it, okay? And then we need positions here. Now, I'm going to do this the way that I did it here, just because I don't want to edit all the code. But what this was trying to calculate here was how to draw the paddle in the middle. So like if the window was 60 pixels tall and the paddle is 90 pixels tall, then 60 minus 90 is 510. And then if you divide by 2, then that's like 255, and so this is basically in the middle. But we're not going to use these very long, so it doesn't really matter what numbers these are. But that's going to be basically trying to calculate the middle of the screen. Okay. So then we need to draw them. Now, drawing them is actually surprisingly easy. So notice that in order to draw anything, you have to go down to where your drawing code is. So all the drawing code is inside of this paint component is where all the drawing code is. So if I want to draw the paddles, it goes down here. Now, when I am drawing the paddles, they are just, I'm going to take this off. Basically, the way you do it is you give it an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, a width, and a height. And so this is what you need to fill in. And so if we're drawing the paddles, we've got variables for that, right? So the paddle height is called paddle height. So you go down here, and so the height will be the paddle height. And the width is called paddle width, right? And then we want the X and the Y coordinates where to draw this. And so right now we're just going to use these coordinates that we just made, the X and the Y positions. So they're called left paddle X and left paddle Y. So if I run this, we should have a rectangle for the paddle. I have an error instead. What did I not do? Oh, I copied the left paddle Y and the right paddle Y. Oh, okay. There is no left paddle X. So for the X and the Y, we're just going to use the margin, right? Because that's what we said when we looked at the picture was, we said, where's Pong? This distance was the margin. So if we go here, there was no variable called left paddle X. We used the margin. So we run this, hopefully we have a paddle there. Now, one kind of weakness of the way that I wrote this code, and I fix it, but not until the last version, is that this is the upper left corner is the position of the paddle. It's not in the middle. We're like measuring from the top, which is a little bit confusing. So like this is the X and Y position of the paddle, not down here. Just saying. All right, but once we do one paddle, we can do the other paddle. If we want to do the right paddle, you just change the Y coordinate to the right paddle, because we're going to have two paddles. They're the same width and height. And then instead of the paddle edge margin, like we know that the width of the screen is like 600. So it'd be like 600 minus that to make it on the right edge. Now, we don't want to put a number in there actually. So I'm going to run this, but then I'm going to change it. See, like that's not actually correct. Oh, also, it would have been 800 was the width. It was 800 by 600 window. All right. So something like this. But if you look, you'll see that that's actually maybe not quite the same distance as that. And it turns out that even though we asked for an 800 by 600 window, the actual place that we can draw in is smaller because there's like borders on the window and stuff like that. So in order to make this like perfectly centered, we would have to do something like, I think like G dot, and I think we want to get the width or something. I think that's correct. We'll see. Uh-oh. It is not. Maybe it's just get width. Yeah. So rather than typing in the number, you can actually just get the width of your screen. Also, I think it still looks a little bit off, right? Because like this distance over here looks smaller than this distance over here. And I think the problem is that how wide is a paddle? Because this is measuring from the top left, and this is measuring from the top left. So this needs to move over like one more paddle width. So like if I do plus paddle width, I think that'll center it. Let's see. Nope. It's minus to move left. And this is how you kind of do stuff, right? You just run it, you look at it, you see it's in the wrong place, and then you figure out like which direction and try to estimate how much you're off. All right, so this looks good. So we've got this, okay? We got our paddles being drawn. Great. What's next? Well, now this is kind of a big update. So this is why I said earlier that if you're trying to make your own game, you might want to start from like one of these like slightly later versions where we've already done this. So we want to make this update a certain number of times per second. So in order to do that, we have to make what we call a timer loop. And so we take code like this. So you say we're going to create a timer, you give it a name. So this is our main game loop. If we want it to be 60 frames per second, then you say new timer, and it's 1,000 over 60, because we're measuring in milliseconds here. So there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So this is 1 second basically, and we want to divide it by 60 to get 1/60th of a second. Okay, and then inside of here, inside of these curly braces here and here, we put whatever needs to happen for every frame of our game. And then we start the timer. So we put this right before the add game panel, which is what, sets up our window for us. So back over here, right here. So when you run this, you don't see anything. Oh, actually, I'll have like a mistake here. Not a mistake, but game panel repaint. That means I'm going to redraw I'm redrawing this now 60 frames per second. Okay. But we're not doing anything. We're just redrawing it every 60th of a second. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start moving stuff around on the screen. And so in order to move stuff around on the screen, then we're going to have to start creating functions. So this one's called update paddles, and there's nothing in it. But this is where we would put all the code which moves the paddles around. When we have a ball, we'll have one with all the code for moving a ball around, and so on. Okay? So we're going to start creating functions like these with code for every object in the game. So right now this one's empty, so there's no point in adding it. We'll just move on to here. So this is where we're going to start moving things around, right? And so first of all, we're going to add key presses. So that means now we're going to be able to control our game. Now, in order to do that, you need another import. So we need an import called AWT events. So when you're programming graphical user interfaces, events are like anything, like the mouse moving, a button press, etc. So if we're going to start keeping track of those, we need one more import at the top. So we throw that in there. And then we can start doing our code. So we're going to be moving the paddles around. So number one, we need a variable for how fast a paddle moves. So we just add it, right? So we add this up here, wherever we're adding these. A paddle can move at 5 pixels per frame. Then what keys are we going to use? So the keys that we're going to use are up, down, W, and S. So we're going to make a Boolean. Booleans are true falses, remember. And if you're pressing them, that's true. And if you're not pressing them, it's false. So we have our keys. So we put our keys in somewhere. Again, this is just in the variable section. So, maybe under the paddles here for all of our keys. Those are variables for the keys. We're not reading them yet. And then we need the code to actually get the key presses. So this is another one of those things where you look up how to do and or copy paste it and then just change it for your case. So this line up here, set focusable true, that makes it so the window can be focused. You know that some windows are in the foreground and some are in the background. This makes it so we can, click on the window and give it focus. And then we set up our keys actually. So you can see what we're doing. Into the game panel, we want to add a key listener. So we're going to be listening for keys being pressed. And what keys? Well, up, down, W, and S, the keys that we said we were going to use. And this code here could be for any number of keys. So every key that you want to be pressed, you just put on the list. So up, down, W, S, the variables for them, up pressed, down pressed, W pressed, S pressed. And basically, if the key is being pressed, then we set the variable to true, right, for every variable. And then when you release a key, then we set all the variables back to false. So you press a key, the variable becomes true. You let the key go, and the variable becomes false. So you copy paste this. Notice where this goes. This goes inside of, it goes under the drawing section. So you go here under the drawing section. So before the timer, I guess, although that doesn't actually matter. But here. And let's see. Now, if we run this, it should run, but it doesn't do anything still. While we're at it, maybe let's take this code and put it into Replit. But before I go to Replit, I'm going to put it here so I can find and replace simple Pong with main without having to think very hard. So where's Replit? Over here. So if I put this in now, just to verify that we're in the same place here, I've already done the setting the simple Pongs to main. Stop, run. And you can see that we do have our game running. Doesn't do anything though, right? But we're still making it in Replit. It still will work as long as you replace everything with capital M main. All right, back here. Now we want to actually move the paddles around. So how are we going to move the paddles around? So it's actually really simple. So basically, for the left paddle, we're going to use W and S. So if you press W, then we want to move the left paddle in the negative direction, which is up actually. So just to show you what that's going to look like, I'm going to type some of this myself. So our code here does not do anything yet. I'm pressing keys, nothing's happening. But if you go down here in your timer game loop and I uncomment the update paddles, nothing will still happen because there is no update paddles. But if I add public static void update paddles, and now I can do code. I could say if, well, there's variables for up, down, left, and right? So if I do, I think one of my variables is called if up pressed. Is that the variable name? Oh, up pressed like that. Up pressed. So if up pressed, what do we do? So up was for the right paddle. So you would just do, if up is pressed, take the right paddle Y, I think is what it's called, and we would just want to add to it, or subtract to it, actually, the paddle speed. So basically, if up is pressed, move paddle up 5. right? So if I were to run this now, hopefully it will run. Let's see. Uh-oh. What are you complaining about? Oh, I have to say static. All right, try again. The heck? What are you complaining about? Private void? Oh, okay, so let's do the way it is. Let's do private void, okay. Apparently problem solved. So this is where we are now, but the difference from before is if I press up, the paddle should move. Right? It moves. Of course, it moves up, it doesn't come down. So that's kind of a weakness. So if down is pressed, we move it in the other direction. Now, remember that the corner of 0, 0 is upper left. So when the Y value goes up, things actually move down. So this is down and this is up, basically. All right. So that was for the left paddle. That was for the right paddle. If I want to do the left paddle was W pressed. And that was for the left paddle. And S pressed. And that was also for the left paddle. So you just have this where if you're pressing the keys, we move the paddle. And then now the paddles move up and down, both of them, separate keys. Now the problem is they go off the screen. That's not good, right? So to keep them on the screen, we just don't let them go above or below certain values. So for example, if W is pressed and the left paddle Y value is positive. So you can only move the left paddle up if but you can't make it negative. So now you see it stops at the top, it can't go across 0. You do the same thing for the right paddle. Like that. This would have to be right paddle. So now they can't move off the top of the screen, but you also need the bottom of the screen. So for the bottom of the screen, that would be, and the left paddle Y has to be less than, and it's the height of the window. But let's see how I did it here. Game panel get height. Actually, game panel get height minus the paddle height to make it correct. So if I don't have minus the paddle height, like if I just have this, did I do that for both of them? Then you see they can still move off the bottom a little bit. They can't move up, but they can go off the bottom. So you have to have the paddle height there. So you figure these things out by, having them not work right. Okay. So we can only go another 10 minutes in this video, I think. But what are we doing? So we've got the paddles moving. I guess now we need a ball. Right? So for the ball's basically the same. So, the ball needs X and Y coordinates. And the ball needs a speed. again, we're not going to actually use these speeds for anything after some amount of time, but for starters, we have them. Okay, so we have variables for the ball, where it is, and then down here we're going to draw the ball. Drawing the ball is easier than drawing the paddles. We're just going to have a fill oval, so we're going to draw a circle, and you put that in the drawing section. So next to all the other drawing, you just put that in there, and this is the kind of the same way as drawing anything else. So like I'm going to cut it. It's just an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, and then the size and the size for height and width, or width and height actually. So it's just an X and a Y coordinate that you put there. And so you could draw it at the ball X and the ball Y could be the coordinates. But the thing is that I want these coordinates to be the center of the ball. The center of the ball. So instead of like it's going to be the ball, was it ball X like that? Sorry. Ball X minus the ball width. Is that what it is? No, it's just ball size, isn't it? Yeah. Ball size over 2. So that's to make the coordinate be the center. And then you just do the same thing there. And that should be correct. So we should have a ball. Maybe. That's not called ball size. What's it called? That is called ball size. What's the problem? What? Oh, well, I just copy pasted ball X minus. All right. You could also change this if you don't like circles. You can change this to another rectangle for the ball, and then you'll have a little rectangle that way. Also, I put ball X and ball X. That should be ball X and ball Y. That's why the ball was not in the right place. There we go. Okay, so you have a ball. Now we're going to add an update ball, right? So we're going to update the ball. So in your game loop, right? So this is what runs every 60th of a second, where we update the paddles, we update the ball now, and then we're going to repaint. Now, if I try to compile my code, it won't compile because I haven't written that update ball. So we'll do that in the next one. So we need the ball to be moving. Actually, I guess here, sorry. So what do? Every frame, we just add its speed to the ball, and the ball will move. So basically, when we update the ball, whatever the speed is in the X direction, we add that to its position. Whatever its speed is in the Y position, we add it to or whatever its speed in the Y direction is, we add it to the position for the Y. So if we run this, the ball will move, but it won't do what we want. See? It just heads off to nowhere. Because it's not bouncing, right? So bouncing is actually really simple. So what you do to make it bounce is we're just going to look at the coordinates of the ball. So like if the, let's say Y, so that's the ball position in the Y direction. If the ball, if it's ever less than 0, that means it went off the top of the screen. So what you do in that case is if the ball goes off the top of the screen, then you just take its speed and you make it negative. That will turn it around. And then you do the same thing if it's too big. And when I say too big, I mean if it's greater than the, what was it? It was the game panel dot get the height. So if it goes off the bottom of the screen, we flip it around. So now if you look, it'll work slightly different. It bounces. It bounces off the bottom. Okay. Right, so we turn it around if it hits the edge, and that will make it bounce. Now you can make it bounce off the left and the right as well, if you wanted, but that's not the way the game is supposed to work. But if the ball X goes, then we turn around the X direction, and if the ball X, ball speed X, and get width, then this would be to make it bounce off all the sides of the screen. So this would be just a bouncing ball. It doesn't go through our paddles, or it goes through our paddles. It doesn't hit them. Right? So we have a game, almost. Let me go, where am I going? Visual Studio Code. I'm pasting it just so I can find replace. And then I'm going to Replit just to put this in and see what it looks like over there. Stop, run. So you see why I said you can run it in Replit, but it's not really ideal. The buttons, you can see the buttons do work for moving the paddles around and stuff. It just, it's just not going to run fast over here. You could just change the sizes of everything, make the game smaller in Replit. But it's just never going to run great in Replit. All right. Okay, this video is a long video, but maybe we'll go a couple more minutes. All right. So we've got the ball bouncing around. Let's do this. Now we can make it score when the ball goes out of bounds. So that's actually really easy because we actually wrote most of the code. So to make the ball go out of bounds, or sorry, to make a point happen when the ball goes out of bounds, here's what we're going to have to do. So first of all, let's get rid of the code that I just made up here where it's bouncing off the left and the right. We don't want it to bounce off the left and the right. What we want it to do, undo that. What we actually want it to do is if the ball goes off the left side of the screen, that means the right player should get a point, right? So the right player should get a point if the ball goes off the left side of the screen. So you would get I think it's called right player score. And we would add 1 to it. And in the other case, the other side of the screen, it should be the left player score. Now the problem is that we also need to put the ball back in the middle. So we should call a new method called reset ball that will put the ball back in the middle. Like that. I think I have an extra one of these. Hold on. Maybe I don't. Well, now I don't know. So you see the problem? you have to set the ball back at some point. So we have to reset the ball. So make a new function for resetting the ball. So we'll do private void reset ball. And what should reset ball do? Well, basically we want to put the ball back in the middle. So how would we do that? So to put the ball back in the middle, that would just be ball x equals, and let's use the game panel dot get width and divide by 2. That's the middle. Do the same thing for the y. Ball y game panel get height. And then maybe we want it to not always go in the same direction. So you can maybe get a random number. So I'm going to do like int math dot random. Is that it? Oh no, I need a variable name. So let's say I don't know, r equals math dot, help me out here, random. Okay, so random will give you a random number between 0 and 1. Okay, so here's what maybe I want to do. So if I multiply that by 2, now it's between 0 and 2. And then if I subtract 1, no. Yeah, so if I multiply by 2, I'm between 0 and 2. And then if I subtract 1, now I'm between 0 and 1. Is that helpful? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get rid of it. Let's just use the one I have here, wherever it is. So this is getting a random number, and if the random number is less than a half, then the ball's going to be 5, otherwise -5. And the same thing here. This could have been done with an if statement, but this is called a conditional or ternary statement. It's just like a simple if statement. So check if this is less than 5.5. If it is, we're going to set the ball speed to 5, otherwise to -5. And what that'll do is basically it'll start pointing in a random direction. What was all this? Oh, okay. So it's going to start the ball off in a random direction when we reset it. So let's look. I saw that the score started out at like 2 or 3 or something. That wasn't good. Or started at 1 maybe. Why? Ball X, ball Y there. Run. Why is it starting 1-1? That's bizarre. We'll fix that, but anyway, so we have that working. The next thing, or maybe last thing, is basically collision, okay? So, trying to make this smaller. Okay, make this bigger. All right. So then we need collision. So I'm just going to talk about this really quickly. It's a bit tricky, but basically what we're going to do is, for the left paddle, check if the ball is moving left. If the ball is moving left, then we're going to check, check if the ball is moving left, and the X position of the ball minus the ball size is less than the edge margin plus the paddle width. So that's going to check if the ball is basically inside of the paddle. So if the ball is inside of the paddle from the X direction, which is those two lines, and if the ball is inside the paddle from the Y directions, then we hit the paddle. And so hitting the paddle means we should bounce, which means whatever its X direction is gets reversed. So this is really kind of awkward, but it's what has to happen. And I could talk about it more, but it would take a long time to talk about, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. Maybe we can do that later. Let's just put this in the update ball section and see how it looks. I don't know why the ball is coming from the top left corner, but you see how it's working? Now bouncing off paddles works. So you can play the game. All right. So I think we're going to stop here. And what I'll do is that we've almost got a functioning game. There's one more version which cleans up a couple of things. It adds like a game over screen basically. And then there's it says final version. Yours will be slightly different than this because I'm going to fix it up a little. But this final version has several things changed in it and an extra curly brace for some reason. And if you use this version, basically this version has been, oops, that was not Eclipse. This version has been cleaned up a little bit to use floating point values for a lot of the speeds and things. And it just makes the program work a little better. So we have a game over screen, and the ball also can travel at a lot of different directions. And you know, it's faster and so on. So this is more like, this is a better game here. And I even have one more version of it that I'll give you, but maybe next week. And this version has AI, so like I'm controlling the left paddle, but the computer's controlling the right paddle right now. So the computer's winning. So this one has just really simple computer movement for the left-hand paddle. But you don't have access to that at the moment. But you know, you will. All right, so that's it for this lecture. Hopefully this was mildly entertaining, but you'll have a lab where your lab will be to modify the code for Pong a little bit. When I say modify it a little bit, I just mean you're going to need to do something, like decide on a change and then make the change, basically. Okay, so that's it for now. Gotta go. Talk to you guys later.